If I look back over the last 20 years of my adult life and I had to give advice to an 18-year-old today, what would I tell them to do? One of the things as I get older I become less judgmental on is entrepreneurship and remote work and all these little communities which Nomad Capitalist kind of finds itself part of. The idea that everyone should be an entrepreneur because that's what the cool kids are doing now just isn't true. I remember back when I was like 12 and 13 and 14 years old and being an entrepreneur was absolutely not cool and everybody thought it was a geeky thing to do and I still wanted to do it. But now it's cool, but it doesn't mean everyone should do it. Remote work is cool, and what I feel in that community is far too many people are pitching it as like everyone's going to be doing this one day. Or you look at like so many communities that we intersect with and the people, the evangelists are, everyone's going to be doing this one day. The reality that I've learned from traveling around the world is not everyone wants to do this stuff. We have employees in some of the countries where we hire who were begging us to buy and renovate an office so they could move into it because they didn't want to work at home. Different cultures around the world operate differently. Different people have different goals. And so my first piece of advice to an 18-year-old would be don't follow the herd. Go do what you want to do. And you've got to get really connected because especially at a young age, you're going to be influenced by idols you have. You're going to be influenced by your friends. What are people doing? You want to sit down, go and sit on a rock somewhere and figure out in your soul, what is it you want to do? And so for me, I've been very much a contrarian at times, whether it's living in contrarian cities, doing things in different ways, isolating myself at some times. If that's what you want, do it, but don't be a contrarian just to be a contrarian's sake. If you want to move and follow the herd and do things that other people are doing, do that but because you want to do it, and then don't allow the herd to meld you. And so this idea that like, oh, Andrew's an entrepreneur, you should be an entrepreneur, I don't believe that. If you want to be an entrepreneur, you should absolutely own it. But I think that the trajectory over the course of your life will be that trends will come and go. Entrepreneurship will go from being cool to not cool. And you want to make sure that you're doing something that you truly want to do. When it comes to going to university, people say, well, should you go to university? And lots of people talk about this. For me, I think one of the benefits of going to university that I didn't get by going for a year, not really going during that time and then leaving, was networking opportunities. And so if you look at some of the big companies like in Silicon Valley, you look at some of the very, very successful people, they went to these schools and they met people. They met other super smart people who had their finger on the pulse. And so if you're doing something where that's valuable, then there may be a benefit. But my conditions for going to university would be, I would be networking focused, and I would probably want to go somewhere overseas to challenge myself and be part of a new culture and to give myself that experience, because it's a lot easier to go to another country when you're going to school. By the way, if you're coming from the United States, you can probably dramatically reduce your expenses by studying in Europe, for example, versus taking out a whole bunch of student loans and being part of the victim crowd with all of their loans. And so if you want to go to university, obviously because you want to be a lawyer, you want to be a doctor, that's great. I would look in the future and say, is my country going to be the place? And so, Mrs. H is a doctor who studied in Russia, and look at what's happening right now in Russia. If you think that your country may not be the place to be, a skill like being a doctor, being a lawyer may not be as transferable, right? If you're a lawyer in a certain country, can you go and be a lawyer somewhere else? Maybe you can like do some remote law or something like that. It's hard to do, remote brain surgery or remote dentistry, but figure out, with these high degree fields that require you to go to university, is this something where if I'm geographically limited, it's going to be successful in the future? I would want to have fewer geographical limitations. If I'm going to go to university, I would say try and avoid that kind of stuff. There's, by the way, plenty of lawyers in most countries these days, and so figure out something that you can do from absolutely anywhere, because you never know what's going to happen in your country and you want to have flexibility. You don't want to be spending your time, especially if you're from an emerging country where degrees aren't as widely accepted, recertifying your degree and spending 2, 3, 4 years in school to do that in the future. One thing I would suggest to everyone who's just starting out is to learn sales. Sales has kind of fallen out of vogue. The general kind of attack comment you'll see on our channel and so many other channels is, oh, this person's just a salesperson. Well, you should be a salesperson, because I don't care if you're fixing cars. I don't care if you are a doctor, a dentist, a brain surgeon, whatever else. You need to have some kind of sales. What I've taught people over the years, including people from those kind of degree fields where Mrs. H, for example, was like, I know truck drivers, I know mailmen, I know doctors, like that's what I know. Like online ad people, what is that? I've taught people who are like that sales is not about sleazy salesmanship like you see in the movies. Sales is about active listening. What is the person you're talking to looking to accomplish? repeating back and figuring out their needs. And by the way, sometimes it means walking away. It means this is not someone I should work with. This is not someone I can serve. This is not someone I can help. Hey, maybe you want to talk to this guy, he can better serve you, she can better serve you. But to me, sales is really about understanding how to communicate with folks and how to serve other people's needs. And if you can serve other people's needs, if you can solve people's problems, you're never going to be broke for your entire life. And so learn sales, practice how to do that, practice how to, whatever it is you're doing, sell. And therefore, no matter what you will be doing, you'll be very successful. Warren Buffett, who I've been watching a lot of lately and have a lot of admiration for, even though we happen to disagree on tax policy, says learn accounting. It's the language of business. And so if you're going to be in business, you probably want to learn that. That's something that I had to learn later and had to rely on basically hiring a team of people. And so you want to have good accounting skills. You want to understand how to read certain financial statements. It does not have to be incredibly complicated. Kobe Sanchez, who talks about how to start boarding businesses, has a great article on what, like the 3 statements that you need to learn to be able to buy a business, to be able to invest in a business, to be able to run a business. And so if you understand accounting, then you'll obviously be able to be successful in business. Sales, I would say, more important because, again, no matter what you do, you're going to be selling. Even if you're trying to get a job, you want to be able to sell yourself. You want to be able to follow up. When can I expect a response? This is something that we've taught our team at Nomad Capitalist, to be always telling people, here's what comes next. And I think sales is going to teach you how to be forward-looking and how to be proactive, but accounting will also help you. I would also say learn any skill that you're going to need to run a business. And this could be very open-ended. Again, nothing wrong with saying, I went around an auto body shop. I have a friend whose son started a very basic business, buying cars for like $500 scrap, putting a few parts in them, selling them for $2,000, making some money. The question was, can he scale that? And so I think I would look at, whatever I'm going to do, how do I scale this? Right? If I'm running an auto body shop, how do I have 10 auto body shops? How do I make this a big thing? I think that's going to be the future, especially in large countries. I was talking to a number of investors lately who were doing roll-up businesses where they're coming in and they're buying up auto body shops, for example, or buy here, pay here car lots. There's some of the boring businesses that Kobe would talk about, for example. But if you could do that, and if you could have the business sense to say, I invested many, many years ago in a swimming pool cleaning business in the United States. There are not a lot of great business people in that space. And so you've got a lot of owner-operators, you've got a lot of one-man shops, or they've got an assistant or an apprentice, that kind of thing. If you can find a way to scale that, you want to learn the skills of cleaning pools, repairing cars, whatever else, but you want to understand how you can scale whatever you're doing. But in terms of learning the actual skills, one thing I did, and one thing I think helped me, even though I'm very direct with our team, that helped me garner the respect of a lot of folks who are here, is that I've done pretty much all the jobs, because Nomad Capitalist was never supposed to be a company. And so when we started out, it's like, all right, I'm going to write a blog, I'm going to figure out how to use WordPress, I'm going to figure out how to, SEO works, because I just want my work to reach more people. I don't know what's going to come of this, so I learned all that stuff myself rather than outsourcing it. If I'm 18 years old, I want to learn stuff rather than outsourcing it. Outsource it later. You'll see these gurus who are like, outsource everything, like your time is valuable. Let's be honest, your time's not valuable when you're 18 years old. You need to know. And so guess what? I just had a call earlier this week with our technical marketing manager about all the stuff they're doing in SEO. I don't know the latest stuff in SEO. I don't follow every latest trend. I do follow a few people in the industry just because it personally interests me. But I can at least say when I don't agree with something, like, oh, wait a second. And he knows that I know something about that. And so it's not just like what you'll find if you outsource everything to a bunch of freelancers. You will find a lot of freelancers who want to bamboozle you because they don't think you know anything. This is like the auto body shop again, where they hire someone to do their social media marketing, and then they're wowed when like, oh, we have 27 Twitter followers. Like, that's not the metric that you want. Or, you don't need 37 Instagram followers. You need a business that converts. You need to sell things. You need to grow your business and scale. And so you don't want to be reliant on hiring people who know everything about something that you know nothing about. So it's been incredibly helpful for me to understand in our business, how do you execute a client case? What are the things you need to do? Like, how do you talk to lawyers? How do you talk to accountants? How do you make this work together? How do you create a plan? Like, how do you document? How do you talk to clients? How do you sell? How do you market? Like, how should the SEO work? What should the YouTube thumbnails look like? You can delegate that as time goes on, but the idea that everyone today thinks like you should just start delegating because your time is valuable. What you can figure out is how much money are you going to earn in a year, and I would take what you've actually earned. So if you're just starting out, zero, you should do it all yourself. But if you earn $40,000 a year, 2,000 years in an average work week if you're actually working. It's kind of like what the average person in the US would work. So now your time's worth $20 an hour. Can I outsource this well for $20? Right? I'm not a big fan of services like Fiverr because you're just not going to get the quality. I would rather you learn how to design a logo, you learn how to use Canva, you learn how to do your own SEO, and then be able to level up your game so you can outsource it to someone at a higher level. But that's a way you can figure out when to outsource stuff. You have to be honest about what the qualities you're getting when you're doing that. But if you know all the stuff that you're doing, you're going to have a better success rate at being able to keep people accountable for doing it, because that's what's going to happen as you scale. If you're building a business, if you're doing whatever it is, you need to make sure that you can check that everyone's doing what they need to be doing. And so beyond that, obviously you want to love what you do. There's a big debate as to whether passion is important. Like, should you be passionate about it? You should be passionate about something that makes money. I believe that you should make as much money as you can, and you should scale whatever you're doing to the highest possible extent. Maybe what you're doing is super niche, and that's one way that you can grow faster. I happen to like businesses that are much like Warren Buffett would, low cost of capital. They can scale easily. They don't constantly need more capital, and you can just scale them because you're in a niche position and you have a certain moat around you. And so if you're going to do something where you're going to scale up, there may be a certain point where you plateau. Robert Herjavec on Shark Tank once said, nothing wrong with making a whack of cash and then moving on to the next thing if you were to exhaust a market. But exhaust the market, maximize your potential, get it to where it can be. I don't see the benefit, if you're passionate about what you do and you believe in it, of just stopping at a certain point and saying, oh, this is it. Build it up as much as you can. And then, of course, you can apply our strategies of reducing your taxes, lowering your cost of living. If I were 18 years old, I would consider living in some up-and-coming country. I would get a residence permit in, right now you've got all these digital nomad visas. You can live in Malaysia if you have $2,000 a month. You can live in Costa Rica. You can live all over Latin America, really. Europe has some of these. You probably don't need to be super worried about your taxes for a one-year digital nomad visa if you're just starting out, right? You're building something. But I would be living somewhere where my cost of living was lower, where I was getting another cultural experience. If I got that in university, great, but I would be getting a different one at 18 years old or in my early 20s, living in other countries, seeing how the rest of the world works, and also making observations, because you'll see friction in different cultures of how those work, and you'll be able to figure out what works and what doesn't. And so if you're passionate, you'll keep going with it. But find a passion that you can actually exploit into making money. I think that for me, I probably spent too much of my life focused entirely in the business at the exclusion of things that would be my personal passions that didn't really make money but would enrich me as a person. And so now, as I get a little bit older, I say, I'm going to put more time back into those enriching passions, whether it's literature, whether it's whatever it may be. You can add that to your repertoire earlier than I did. And be a more well-rounded person. But you've got to understand, if you're passionate about something, you're not going to be as well-rounded, right? And I think that advice, that when you're 18 years old, you're going to be so well-rounded, is probably not the best. Beyond that, I would say be ethical. And so one of the things that I'm really focused on right now is, if you're building a business, for example, you're going to be perhaps of the mindset when you're just starting of, everything is on the side of, hey, let's let people who work here do whatever they want. You're going to learn some hard lessons, and you should be aware you're going to learn hard lessons about how the world works. And so I would set boundaries, and I would allow people to set their own boundaries and allow that. If you're just living in the world of the LinkedIn heroes, where everything that the business owner does is wrong, you're going to come in and say, hey, I'm going to shake this up. But you're going to realize eventually that while you want to be respectful and you want to grow a great team that really is rewarded, that obviously certain people are going to need to be micromanaged in your business. Certain rules are going to need to be set. Not everyone gets to work from home in their underwear whenever they please, for however many hours they please, because that's not going to get the job done. And so I would focus on ethics and being ethical and being honorable, following the golden rule, as a way to say, how am I going to treat people with respect while also having boundaries that I need enforced? And if people don't honor my boundaries, I'm not going to have them in my life. I think far too many people don't set boundaries. I certainly didn't for a long time. I allowed people to define who I should be and who I was, and I think that made it harder to, or at least slower to get ahead. And so if you focus on being ethical, honoring your word, do what you say. If you promise to pay someone, pay them. If you promise to do something, do it. Do that, but also be aware of people having boundaries, and you need to set your own. That's my advice to an 18-year-old. And so I don't think you have to start a business. You don't have to go to another country, but I would at least want the experience of having lived somewhere else. I would want the experience of having seen other cultures. I would want the experience of learning how to sell, knowing how to read accounting, and knowing that what I was doing I was passionate about and I could scale, and that I knew what was going on in all aspects of what I'm doing so that I could grow it to the biggest it could be, and I could feel positive about creating something for the world.